event is different. So I mean, and I'm such a neophyte that for me to say this is what it is, it was going to make me seem completely and totally ignorant. But I'll say from my point of view, it has been extremely gratifying to see the interest from such a extremely mixed generations around a film like this. But I had no idea this world existed, which is the voting bodies and the critical bodies of the film industry in North America. It's massive. It's a whole culture. It's like the fashion world.
How did you find yourself getting interested in this story anyways? Like, I understand you read the book, and I asked that question intentionally. Like, I understand that you read the book and you have the opportunity to make the film. But, like, even just hearing what I did about you, what about the BlackBerry story was grabbing you?
I'll tell you, at first, I was deeply uninterested in it. So I read the book and I thought, okay, this is a compelling business story in a way, but I myself am not the person to do this, and I don't know why I was asked. And if you were to ask the people who wanted me to make the film, I think they'd be like, "Oh, this needs like a kind of new energy or a new take or whatever."
Yeah, and you had this reputation as sort of like someone who's going to break barriers.
What iconoclast?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so maybe they thought that would be like an interesting mixture, but really I didn't take to it at all. And it wasn't until I viewed the story of Research in Motion, and specifically those three main guys, Jim Balsillie, Mike Lazaridis, and Doug Freegan, as exactly what it was like for me around the time that you and I met 8 years ago. Young men who are almost in a kind of fraternal environment dealing with early success. And what that does to the fragmented egos of three very different people who all view work in a different way, which I do. I right before making this film, I was kind of thinking about, like, because I think depending on who you ask, I think I come across, me personally, as very different people. And it was something I was realizing as I was meeting more Nirvana the band fans in real life. And what I kept experiencing was people who met me and were expecting me to kind of be like crazy or kind of zany, like funny,
okay,
you know,
yeah.
like basically high energy, high energy and irreverent, like almost like the cartoon character that they see in the show, very much like the character I play in BlackBerry, Doug. It's like they thought that's what I was, and I was feeling like, oh man, this is so strange that all my friends don't see me this way at all. My family doesn't see me this way at all, but I've created this persona that people think, oh, this guy is just playing himself. And I found that so, I don't know what my conclusions were about it, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I thought, oh, maybe I can investigate this triad in this movie, and I can divide these three parts of my psyche into three people, because I, like Jim, am very interested in working hard and going to work in order to accumulate political capital.
Yeah, achievement.
Right, achievement, and even the dark side of that.
Yeah,
right. Like
ambition.
I'm not afraid to admit that like a kind of like sharp-toothed, almost evil ends justify the means ambition is well within.
You got a bit of that.
Hugely.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look closely at Nirvana the band or the Dirties, I mean, that's essentially what I'm expressing.
Yeah.
The message of most of those films is, you know, the ends justify the means, while also but they're all tragedies. Like, they all destroy the character. So I'm acknowledging don't actually do that. But that's certainly me. And then this perfectionist who is willing to alienate people and destroy his own life in search of something that he can't even quantify as perfect, just like Mike, that is also me too. But then I'm also the kind of person who's like, let's just party. I don't care. I just want to be with my friends. I want to go into work whether I'm being paid or not, because I'd rather be here than anywhere else. And I think those three forces, or those three psychologies, really are at war in myself. And I thought, oh, I can try to work this out in this movie. And so as soon as I saw that, I really clicked with the material, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Is it harder when they're real?
Oh, this is a great question, and one that I obviously get faced with a lot, which is, I mean, you're basically walking down the road sort of towards a sense of almost ethics or morality, right? Because one of the things that you never realize when you're making a movie like this, especially with your friends, is that, oh, this is really going to affect people, especially the ones that we're showing their lives. Like, I mean, this movie has affected Jim Balsilie's life. It's certainly affected Mike Lazaridis' life, although I haven't gotten to speak with him. And
he's kind of out of the.
All I've heard is that he's extremely reclusive, and that he may be living in Greece. Wow. So I wanted so badly to get to some feedback from him.
What was that line Norm Macdonald said? The best thing in life to be is rich but not famous.
Yeah, well, he's done it.
Yeah, it feels all right to me.
Yeah.
And the other guy is a composite, right? Your character is.
Well, I'm playing a real guy, Doug Freegan, except because there was nothing written about him and I had no videotape, and really only 2 photographs. I actually based a lot of my my character on an engineer who I did meet, who is like the 20th or 30th employee, and he was a guy who has amazingly become like one of the world's most famous woodworkers.
Yeah, I was reading you talk about
His name's Matthias Wandel, and he was the person who gave us all the photographic journals that he'd taken of in the 90s of Research in Motion, and that's what Adam Belanger, my production designer, based everything on. Okay. So I'm really he was kind of a prankster, like social convener type guy. He would deny this, but a lot of my portrayal is based on him. Okay, so you're heading down the road of, maybe we should just play the clip. We have the clip of with Balsillie on the National being asked about the portrayal in the film. Could we play it? Yeah, great.
Well, many employees have been very vocal in pointing out to the mischaracterizations, and there's been a piece in the National Post today, and I suspect there's more to come. The general consensus is it's 5% accurate and 95% made up. And you do have to remember that I've lived 60 years with the word silly in my last name, so I can handle being teased.
What do you make?
It's funny. I got to meet Jim right after our Toronto premiere.
I talked to Glenn, who plays him, 2 hours before the Toronto premiere.
Really?
Yeah, 2 hours before the Toronto premiere. He was sitting right there.
Oh, come on.
And I said, how are you feeling about it?
I think he was a bit nervous about meeting
thank you for saying
Jim.
it. Yeah, he was
hugely.
Yeah.
And I know that, and that really started to develop as we realized the film was going to get a wide release. But I mean, that just speaks to Glenn's sophisticated empathy. Like, he really doesn't want to upset the person that he worked so hard to portray. But I got to tell you, I think that at a certain level, Jim is. He's saying, oh, yeah, they got all this wrong, hiding a huge smile. Like, in many ways, he comes off as like the coolest, most interesting guy in this movie. And sure, he's aggressive and I mean, you might even say it sometimes that he's sort of a prick the way that we portray him, but he gets things done. I say, I'll put it to you this way.
Okay.
My friends who, I alluded to this earlier. Almost everybody who I meet and has only seen Blackberry, and they talk to me for 2 minutes, they're like, oh my God, you are exactly like the guy you play in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that a lot. All the people who've known me my whole life who see this movie, and I haven't seen me in a while, and they go, oh my God, you're exactly like Jim. So
the shadow self, the deep down within, the unbridled ambition.
Well, look, that was my goal. I was trying to deal with this, but I couldn't be more thankful with how Jim has reacted. Even that is, look. This is, when we were making the film, we were making it under cover of night, not letting anybody know we were making it under a code name because we thought they were going to get an injunction and sue us.
Wow.
So the fact that the film is out and Jim is talking about it on the National is like...
And showing up to the premiere?
It's like we won the lottery, right? And again, he and a lot of his friends, because he's extremely well liked in the business community in Canada. Obvious, I mean, it's a tight-knit industry. Mm-hmm. I think everybody is either celebrating overtly or secretly over the idea that there's now a kind of renaissance of this period in Canadian business history, and that it's not going to be forgotten. Because at a certain level, I mean, I can speak to this directly, 99% of the international people who talk to me about this film say the same thing. I didn't know Blackberry was Canadian.
What does that mean?
What it means is that we have no like international legacy of great, like, it's almost like this didn't happen on the world stage. Our country doesn't get the credit for the fact that we invented the smartphone. And hopefully this does something towards changing that.
Yeah, what's the line in the film about creating the best team?
Yeah, it's right. It's in the trailer. It's when Mike is saying we can't do this. Our engineers aren't good enough, and Jim says, I thought you said these were the best engineers in the world, and he said, well, I said they're the best engineers in Canada.
Do you think about that in terms of Canadian film as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God, it would shock people to realize that English Canadian cinema has
good distinction, by the way.
Major. Well, it is a major distinction.
Yeah.
Quebec is a different country in terms of its cultural relevance.
Yeah.
English Canadian cinema has zero international identity, and I don't mean 0.1%. I mean zero. Nobody outside of Canada cares or knows that we have any kind of cinema of distinction at all, and it's a travesty. It's so funny. I mean, you had made this connection. I never even thought of it, between basically Blackberry and Canadian cinema generally. It does not exist outside of this country. And for most Canadians, I think the average Canadian, it also doesn't exist in this country. I think if you were to poll just somebody on the street, even in a major city, I don't think they'd even be able to name a Canadian film.
So is that on your mind? Like, and what I mean by that is that you're not making a film about, I don't know. You're not making a film about the Henry Ford in Detroit, but you're making it in Canada with Canadian filmmakers, with Canadian behind the scenes folks, with Canadian actors. You're making a very ultra Canadian film. I was intentional in my introduction to say that this is a very inside Canada film in some ways. A lot of references. This is a very Canadian film. How do I put this? Is it on your mind to make a really, really Canadian film that's not Canadian? Do you know what I mean?
Well, look, you say not Canadian, and I think that in some ways is a
not Canadian given what you just told me.
Right. Because in some ways, people will use Canadian as a marker of like almost indistinction, like, it's so Canadian. In fact, in some ways, it's a sort of inside joke that if you say something looks really Canadian, it almost seems like an ersatz American. Like there's something slightly wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
There's an uncanny valley to it, which is normally what Canadian means when you're referring to cinema,
especially in the States, especially when you, especially in the U.S. when you say, it's a small Canadian film.
Well, it has aesthetic proproperties.
Yeah.
To say something is Canadian, and they're not positive, they're all negative, right? I mean, maybe you could say it uses a lot of natural light. That's one thing that marks Canadian.
So
film.
You're thinking like, I got to make a film about Canada that doesn't feel to use the slur Canadian.
Well, I'm not even thinking that. I think I'm going to make one of my movies.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's fractally Canadian is very interesting to me, and certainly I like the fact that I was able to cast almost all Canadians that people don't really know are Canadians, right? Like Michael Ironside, Saul Rubinek. I
didn't know Saul Rubinek was Canadian.
Right. Well, I wanted to have again to abuse this word twice, but this kind of fractal relationship within the film where you were having the same experience at the actor level that you were at the product level, which I know sounds so pretentious, but I love the concept of people being like, oh my gosh, I remember that product or actor. Oh, and I didn't know that they were Canadian or it was Canadian, right? Like I wanted that experience to be happening on multiple levels throughout the film, which is why there's so many of these amazing character actors that I wanted to kind of bring out and showcase in the movie, and have audiences react to them, hopefully the same way that they'd react to Blackberry itself.
Where does that come from in you? That thing you just told me about, like I said, you were trying to make a non-Canadian film. You said, no, I'm just trying to make one of my films.
Well, look, I'm Canadian. My dad, when I was a kid, it was so proudly Canadian. He's such a patriot. And he would always say, we live in the best country in the world. We just have a marketing problem. And I am, I guess, in some ways trying to be the living spirit of that. And I'm trying to, especially for young filmmakers, which has sort of been like the mission of my life, like my B plot is basically trying to get young people to believe that they can make interesting movies in this country and they don't need to leave. Because I think worse than all of the national problems we have, the funding problems, like our own insecurity about our identity, worse than all of that is the fact that the major marker of success for any artist, musician, filmmaker, whatever, is to leave.
You get out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that so long as that remains the number one goal of every young person who wants to make it, we're never going to be able to cobble together a meaningful creative identity in this country, because we're going to lose all of our role models, which is the world I grew up in. I couldn't name a Canadian filmmaker that I wanted to be, right? It's why somebody like Tom Green was so powerful for young people like me, because he was like a complete and total outsider and a maniac. And, you know, I look at him now and I'm embarrassed. He's like Weird Al in a way.
But there was something exciting that he was like those. I remember the stuff that I first watched. It was from Ottawa.
You know, Ottawa Channel 10. It was crazy.
Yeah. And like even in Newfoundland, we got some of that. Like some of it would get played on Much Music and stuff like that, you know? And there was something exciting. You're right. There was something that was more exciting to me that it was being done in Ottawa than it was done when he was doing it in LA.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely.
Yeah.
And outside of that, I really had nobody to look to. And so I hope that at least in the next decade, that changes in a major way. And I mean, it's not going to be, it's going to be a huge job. It's going to be a huge job. And I'm trying my best to try to figure out solutions to it, but I'm not like a policymaker or a politician. I actually have no experience whatsoever in how to retain citizens into a community. But Montreal did it really well with musicians. I don't know what we do. There seems to be a growing cabal of filmmakers in Toronto. And that's worth celebrating and optimistic, but God only knows.
I mean, is there, this is a big question, is there a world in which we're going to have to rely on those funding bodies less? Is filmmaking changing?
Look, my goal, and I've stated this publicly many times, is that our problem is that if you look at our country in sort of a sports team term, is that we are not spending nearly enough money on rookies. And almost our entire budget cap is going to like veteran players who need to retire. We have a risk-averse, nice culture. And what that leads to is everybody knowing one another and it being very difficult to say no to your friends. And I think we're stagnating because of that, because with 1/10 or 1/100th of the amount of money we spend on more experienced filmmakers, we could be financing hundreds of kids to make movies. And if they get their start and do something interesting, they'll stay. Because all of a sudden, it's like, I just know when I was making my first film, if I was feeling like, oh my God, and my country wants me to do this, this is crazy. I can't believe my country's allowing me to do this. Like it just lets them know that they've got a home here. And again, this is maybe like a bit like blue sky thinking, but I think
it feels kind of patriotic, to be honest, man. You know?
Right.
It does.
Like,
it feels kind of like, you know, it feels like.
Yeah, which at a time when it almost seems like patriotism is not in vogue at all. But like I think that there can be a Canadian exceptionalism that comes from the fact that we're lacking a national voice. I always pitch this to film students as an opportunity for them to step into a gap, because we're totally undefined in terms of what the world thinks Canadian means. Totally undefined. There's a vague sense that we're nice, right? And if 3 or 4 major voices in filmmaking were to step into that void, it would define their careers. I don't think it's going to be me. I think it's going to be somebody who's like 20 or 19 years old right now, who is given an opportunity to do this and does something that we haven't seen before. But to your question, is this talking about a I mean, because it seems as though a conservative government is coming in.
No, I'm not. It wasn't a question. My question wasn't, is this out of some sort of sense of patriotism? Because that's not my sense of you. My sense of you is freedom. My sense of you is from looking at your work over the past few years, and especially over the past couple of days getting ready for this, is that you really don't want anyone to tell you how to make or how you can make the art that you make, that include funding bodies, that can include American sales agents, and that can also include, I have to leave my home. I have to go somewhere.
Right, and that's this kind of almost social rules that are put on you, which I still very much feel. Although, don't be so fooled. I give the sense that I'm like a total anarchist, but like rules are like the best thing in the world for filmmakers. I love rules. Well, I love them.
That's because you're Mike and Doug and Jim.
You're right, exactly.
You're all three.
Yeah, and I can't get rid of any of them.
But the I think about this a lot in my own life. It's the tension of those three things that makes you who you are. You can't, if you were one of those things, I don't know what would happen to you. But it's the tension of all those things
exactly
that leads you to who you are.
Well, and you basically summed up what what that movie Blackberry is about. that they destroy one of them.
That and a scroll wheel. That's all it's about.
Yeah.
Did you get any Blackberries in the mail or anything?
No, but I have hundreds and thousands of them at my office because we had to buy so many of them off of eBay in order to, because they're gone. It's a dead product.
Yeah.
And so like I think we might be the world's largest owner of Blackberries in the world.
Matt, I really love the film, and I really love talking to you.
You too. It's a total pleasure.
Yeah, man. Nice to have it. But once every 7 years, we'll run into each other.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm gonna have to make I got a while then to make my next film.
Yeah, you do. Thanks for coming in.
It was a huge pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We knew Matt was going to be here the whole time. I think he went for a hike and he made it back. It's all good. It's all good. He's carb loading in the green room. How's everyone doing? It's like nice and full in here, yeah? Woo, yeah, woo, we're allowed to woo. Especially if I say anything that could even remotely be considered funny, I appreciate the woos.
I thought I was waiting for you to introduce me. I didn't realize that I was supposed to walk out with you.
Oh, okay.
Well, because you were so polite, you were just like, all right, well, we're going to get started. And I was like, okay, great.
Well, you kept eating, and I'm like, oh, that's a big hike. He probably needs to get some
This
fuel.
also, already much ink has been spilled over me going on this hike where you imply that I got lost or something. I've been back for hours. The problem was I was waiting to get a ride here. I didn't do anything wrong at all.
Oh, no. And lest it seemed like I was implying that, I clearly wasn't. If anybody did anything wrong, it was, I don't know, let's blame it on Tim, the engineer, who had nothing to do with it, but he's a very good person to take responsibility.
And I wasn't carb loading. There was an giant open bag of hard bite barbecue chips folded over, sitting in the middle of the table. And I thought, well, I've got to wait for this guy to do this intro. How long is this going to take? And then for real, what I honestly thought was that you were doing a bit. I was watching you sit there quietly being like, this is bombing. What's he doing?
It
somebody knocked on the door and was like, are you going? And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. It absolutely wasn't a bit, and yet I was like, this is bombing.
Everything's clear now.
Okay.
I completely see what's happened.
And I don't even know if we're recording yet, but if we are, hi, thanks, and welcome.
Now you're going to do the intro.
No, I guess I am. Is there a point at this point? But let's see. We didn't have time, and when I say we again, Tim, it's all Tim's fault.
Does anybody here even know who Tim is?
Tim's in the control room. He's the guy smiling and clenching fists. Greetings. Welcome to the Chilliwack Independent Film Festival Behind the Scenes with Matt Johnson. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the Chilliwack Independent Film Festival and this session are taking place on the traditional and unceded territories of the Stalo people. The festival would like to recognize and honor the contribution that Indigenous people have made and continue to make in our communities. My name is Darren Blakeborough, and I am a media studies professor in the School of Culture, Media, and Society at the University of the Fraser Valley. And I am incredibly fortunate that I am able to introduce to you and to talk movies with one Matt Johnson. Matt is a director, a writer, an actor among the many hats that he wears, and is in Chilliwack supporting his film Blackberry. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and sit and talk with us today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Woo! So, basically, I think what we're going to do today, Matt, is just kind of get to know you a little bit better. So let's go and talk about what it was that drew you to film. Do you have a defining moment when you were growing up where you saw a movie or something and you're like, that is what I want to do?
Is it mostly filmmakers here? Who is this? Who are you? Because I've noticed that there's different layers that you can talk about a filmmaking career, and it would be completely useless to talk about this with the intention of trying to talk to filmmakers if there are none here. Like, is this to the general public? Who are you people?
Okay, by applause, filmmakers.
They must be. You must all be filmmakers. I find that, yeah, if this is a regional film festival, everybody here at least must be thinking that you may not be a filmmaker, but you have some vision of yourself being a filmmaker at some point, however hopeless this may be, right? So I'll talk about it in terms of that, because I think that's probably more useful. And it's that when I was young, it wasn't that I saw something and was like, oh yeah, I really want to make movies. I had just had a number of experiences in my life that had put me on a path towards being like quite mischievous. Like I was very interested in being like tricky. And the first one of those that I remember was when I was quite young. I would always get asked questions by my mom and my younger brother that I knew that they knew the answer to. I'll give you an example of something. So let's say I was just on the phone with best friend in grade 1, and everybody in the house knew I had just been talking to him. Like there's no doubt I was talking to him. I had no other friends. And I'm on the phone talking with somebody, okay? I'd hang up the phone, and either my mom or my brother would say, were you on the phone with? And I would know they knew that I was on the phone with him. And so I'd be like, why am I being asked this? And it put me in this bizarre position after being asked it maybe 30 times or something like that. I would be like, I'm going to say that I wasn't, and I'm going to see what happens. And so I would start saying things that I knew, well, I mean, obviously I know they're a lie, but I knew that they knew was a lie. To put us in a complicated position where they would be asking me a question where, why would they have asked if they knew what the answer was? Do you know what I mean? Like if I ask you something and I already know 100% what you're going to say, why have I asked you this? And so I got very addicted to answering questions where I knew the questioner already knew with total veracity what the answer was, to try to create situations that would put them in bizarre positions with me, where then they'd need to either admit that they knew I was lying, or they'd have to ignore it and be like, what a weird young man, right? And I got so addicted to this. I know this will sound like such a bizarre answer, but I've had a lot of time to psychoanalyze myself, because I get asked this literally all the time, right? And that led to me constantly lying to strangers when, like all through my, like basically from age 8 until age 25, I would lie just all the time about everything to people who I didn't know, trying to see how far what I could make people believe about standard things. This is sounding quite psychotic, and I recognize that, but it is the truth. It is what led me into the position I'm in, because when I kind of matured out of just the prankish nature of this, I started realizing, oh, the things that I'm telling people, I've put myself in a position where I've taught myself to be able to say things that are completely ridiculous and have people believe them because of how I'm saying it. And so that's one piece. So that's the first big piece. And the other thing that this combined with was a book I read by an Australian children's author named Graham Bass, who wrote his first book, I think, called Animalia. But the second book that he wrote, which really had a huge impact on me, was I think called The 11th Guest, or it was essentially about a big dinner party that animals throw, okay? And all the animals have been invited, including even Little Mouse. And you read the whole book, and early on, all the food has been eaten, but nobody's fessing up to it, and you have no idea who ate the food. And you read through the whole book, and it never tells you who ate all the food, and it's like a mystery. And then you go back to the beginning of the book and read it again, and you realize everything you read had little tiny clues in it leading to who actually ate all the food. And at the very back of the book, there's a wax sealed section where you're only supposed to break if you really want to know the answers. And I got this book at the book fair, I guess in grade 4, ironic. got the same book, and we were in a competition to figure out who had eaten all this food without breaking the seal. And I broke the seal with a very sharp knife and then resealed it and acted as though I had figured it out. And of course I didn't recognize this at the time, but it was like that experience of being very into this book and then learning how to sort of tell straight-faced lies. And then the third piece of it was early internet video that I was watching, where I would see people shooting in public with real people and not really caring what the consequences were. It was not like Jackass. That's I guess a little piece of the puzzle. Tom Green is sort of a piece of the puzzle, but it was really like early YouTube. I give a lot of credit to these guys. Their name is Mega64, and they were very, very early to shooting things in public with wireless microphones. And sort of those three things came together for me that to create a kind of style that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to make movies where the audience thinks one thing is happening, but you realize, oh, it's something completely different, and you're constantly asking what's real and what's not real. Like, that's a part of the process of watching it, and it involves a kind of like innocent deception, like lies where the person lying is not, because normally when people lie, you lie because you're trying to avoid consequences, right? You did something bad and you want to avoid the consequences, or you want to make yourself look better than you really are. You want to gain some status that you don't actually have. Those are normally the reasons that all people lie. And this was like a third reason for lying, which was like you're almost trying to, it sounds so crazy saying it. It's like you're trying to create a little fantasy situation where you and some other person can play in it. It's like lying as a form of play. You know, it's like when two kids say, I'm the mom and you're the dad, and we're going to pretend. That's a lie in a way, right? But that kind of play I became very interested in real life with real people who did not know we were lying to each other, right? I like that dance I found very interesting. And so it wasn't like I saw a movie when I was a kid that was like, oh, I want to make movies. It was like I had these inclinations towards certain types of behavior that led me into making movies. So it's not like I've talked about this before. Like, I have no interest in the construction of films, and I have no talent for it either. It's not like I see a movie and I'm like, oh, it's so great. I mean, it's absurd to even say. It's like I'm never thinking about, oh, isn't it great that they put the camera there, or like how do you construct an action sequence like that? Like, I have no ability to analyze film in that way at all. I have no clue. Like, I'll watch a movie and it's like, if I like it, I'm mesmerized by it, and I can't tell you anything about how they made it. But if I don't like it, then I walk out, or I just turn it off. So I have no analytical filmmaking ability whatsoever, but I do like the process of making movies to get at this feeling that I was just talking about.
Of lying.
Yeah, but again, lying not for my own gain. It's like lying because, man, it's so hard to. I'm trying to think of other media that does this that everybody would have seen, but there's a kind of like childhood imaginative play that I think you can access in filmmaking or in art generally, that where lying is not. It is like it's like one of the ingredients you use. It's like flirting or teasing. It's like you're going on a verbal journey with somebody where you're going to see how far you can put something. And I know this is not so related necessarily to Blackberry, the film that I just made, but in its own way it is, because I mean that's a movie that is full of lies. It's like so much of that movie is completely faked.
But not the parts that you think.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the game of it, is that we tried to make it so that people would watch it and be like, well, there's no way any of this actually happened. And then when people find out how much of it did happen, it's like quite jarring, because then it makes you think, oh, so did all of it happen? But I like that feeling. I talk about this a lot, about like the meta experience of watching a film as being the same as like watching a good magic trick, where you're not just watching the trick, you're also simultaneously unpacking, well, what's happening to me as I watch this trick? And you're trying to figure out how this person is doing it. It's like such an interesting experience, because it's like your attention splits into two, and you're watching it twice in parallel at the same time. And I love films that do that, where as you watch it, you are simultaneously asking yourself, how did they do this, and what of this is really true. And I think that films and magic are the only two places that can do that, really. At least the only two art forms that can do that. Or conversation, like if you're dealing with a con man, right, or somebody who's really trying to trick you, then you can also have that experience, which I've had a number of times in the Erin Mills Town Center, where, believe it or not, after the movie Catch Me If You Can came out, there are a number of like just hack idiot guys who would go around trying to con people just verbally. And I'll never forget this one guy who, I won't go all the way through it, but he was trying to, he had an envelope with his name on it, and he said inside the envelope was a check that his boss had given him, and he couldn't cash it or something like that. And so he wanted me to cash the check myself and to give him the money for the what the check was. And I knew instantly, because he's a horrible actor. He's horrible. And even at whatever 14 or 15 years old, I could tell, like, this guy doesn't have it. Like, he was not gifted in that way. And so, but I watched his whole bit, and really watching him and like listening to him, and even he was falling apart. Like, he was corpsing, doing his shtick to me, because I was trying to take him seriously enough. And anyway, then later, who was working at the Laura Secord chocolate store, was in my eye line as I was walking away with this guy. I was like, anyway, see you later. And then he waved to me, and she was like, oh, hi, Matt. And I said, oh, hi, like that, as I'm leaving. And I realized, oh man, in the moment, I was like, I've done something very bad, because I've created the illusion that I am friends with this guy for, and lo and behold, the next day, Dad called me thinking that I was a part of this scam, and he was furious with me, and we had to go down to the police station together so that I could say what had happened, because his con had worked on, because I had created a feeling of, well, what's that called? You know, I'd endorsed him just by being near him and waving. And so the envelope was empty. There was no check in it.
That's the only instance that I'm aware of an in-person Nigerian prince email.
Yeah. Well, at Erin Mills Town Center at this time, it happened a lot. Like, I witnessed it happen all the time. If you guys were there, was anybody around Erin Mills Town Center in the early 2000s? You missed it. It was happening a lot. Well, of course, now you all still have your money. They would have fleeced you guys.
And you know it's legit because there was a Laura Secord, and I'm going to guess the other end had an Orange Julius.
I was in the basement, attached with a Dairy Queen, where I saw a woman. I'll never forget. I was 12 years old, and I saw a woman by herself get a Blizzard. It was a small, and I watched, and I was behind her in line, and she got the Blizzard, and she paused as she was looking at it, and I was like, why is she pausing here? And then she picked it up, and I'm telling you, this was a totally normal Blizzard. There's nothing wrong with it. Full, it looked great, and she told the staff, this is the most pathetic Blizzard I've ever seen. And I thought, oh my God, what? And she just sent it right back, and she gave it away. And as an adult, I realized what was really going on here. She felt guilty about buying this Blizzard. And when it arrived, she had buyer's remorse. Because there was nothing about the Blizzard that was, like, this was the platonic ideal of a Blizzard. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was nothing in this Blizzard that you could say was un-Blizzard. So for her to say, this is the most pathetic Blizzard I've ever seen, she was grasping at straws. And and I know...
Did she taste it?
No. She didn't even do this thing. she just looked at it and said, this is the most pathetic Blizzard I've ever seen, and gave it back and left. And now, only in the last 10 years have I had clarity on what had really happened there. And it's that she felt a kind of guilt. She was there by herself, and she was like, oh, I shouldn't do this. But she couldn't admit that. It'd be like, she didn't have the confidence to say, you know, I don't need this Blizzard. And you want to know what gave me the clue about this? It was a small.
So she could have justified it because it was small, but even that
was her way in.
Yeah.
Her way in was the word small. But even then, when it appeared, she was like, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. Yeah, I got a lot of stories about the Erin Mills Town Center, actually, if you have any more.
We've got time.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there.
You still talk?
No, interesting story about him. I called his dad, who would always, this is for British citizens, and he would always answer the phone by saying his phone number. So his dad would answer the phone by saying, except with a British accent. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's what they must just do in England. And I needed to borrow a lawnmower because I was going to mow the grass when my parents were away. This is much later in life. This is like within the last 10 years. And he said that he had just mowed his lawn and the power was dead. And I said, really? I hadn't talked to this guy in 20 years, okay? So I had like ceased being my friend in grade 6 when he fell in love with my girlfriend at the time. And I'm realizing if this is posted, if these people view this, they're going to be quite confused as to how they've made it into this story. Anyway, no, apparently, wow, this has really brought us full circle. Apparently, he conned his family out of a bunch of money to start a soda pop company in Los Angeles. Isn't that crazy? And so I called asking for the lawnmower, and he said, where? And I was like, I haven't talked in 20 years. And he was like, I know you're lying. And I was like, I swear, Mr. I have not talked to your son. I just need a lawnmower. And he said, oh, yeah, he borrowed money to start a soda pop company and has vanished.
Of all the things that you would need money for in LA, you use soda pop as the foundation.
A soda pop company, yeah. Again, he was a dear friend. I mean, wonderful guy. He's an amazing guy. He comes from a very good family, but I haven't heard from him.
So this world of lying, I mean, it makes sense because that's essentially what filmmaking is, right? You're crafting a lie that
you're trying to make it seem more than the truth.
And we know that it's not the truth. We know it's not the real world, but we try to treat it like it is.
I think that's not totally true. I think Werner Herzog has a really great point on this, which is that he talks about something called the ecstatic truth, which I think you could change into something called a metaphorical truth, which is that there are some things that are truer than facts. And I think that films are a great example of that. And if you pick any movie you love, even though, of course, none of it happened, it's the whole reason it works and the reason you love it is because it seems true, right? I mean, I can't think of a movie here we'd all love that we'd all agree on, so I'll pick like a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, maybe, okay? Like it's a movie that's generally loved, and of course none of that happened, but it's true, you know? Andy Dufresne really did crawl out of that prison. Red really did find him that poster. Like that really did happen, even if we know none of it happened, and it's a part of our collective history. Like it's real, and it's realer than a story that you might tell me about somebody you know that went to prison, etc. Like it's deeply true, and it's deeply true because it's useful to us as a society. Like the story of that movie or any movie, I mean, pick any movie that really does have meaning to you. It has meaning because it just gets back to that feeling I was talking about when I would watch a movie and I'd be like, oh, I want to figure out how they did this at the same time, like having a parallel watching experience. I find that the best moments in movies is when I'm watching something and in my head I go, oh, that's true. Like if some piece of behavior or some line or some betrayal or anything, or even an image, and I just say to myself unconsciously, I'm like, that's true. That is what happened. This is inevitably the case when I'm watching the film. It just feels like it had to happen that way, and that is the older I get, the more I realize that that's what it's all about, and somehow that has. It's created an interesting cross-section in my life where it's like I'm trying to deceive people with my films and all my work. Like I'm trying to create a kind of illusion that seems true, where you watch it and you go, oh, this was all lies, and yet it seems deeply true. It's like it's realer than real. And yeah, I'm still having trouble grasping exactly what that means, but I don't think it's correct to say when we watch a movie, we all know it's not true, because I think what we're striving for is that that becomes true in our watching it, and that it can stay with us as a truth, even though technically it's not factually correct. But that's in some ways a meaningless qualifier for a piece of art. Like whenever, did you guys watch documentaries? I'm sure you did. Like, I love documentaries much more than I love fiction movies. I love them because they're so much better at making you believe they actually happened. My favorite documentary is this documentary called Crumb about the comic book artist R. Crumb, and this movie's like full of lies, and yet it seems so insanely true that I still think about those characters like almost every day, like the people in that movie. And well, my point is just that the notion of truth as a qualifier of goodness is like, oh, this is real, or this actually happened, or they got everything right. I think that's completely overrated. I think that we as a culture decide what's true when it comes to art. Like, truth is almost like what makes it into a canonical discussion with other artists 100 years from now.
Is that why with your features, right, like Blackberry, it's a true story, and Operation Avalanche about the moon landing, right? It's a fictionalized account of the moon landing, but the moon landing is a true story. Is that why you focus on real life events when you do a feature?
Yeah, I'm always trying to make things about stuff that people have preloaded ideas about. I, for a long time, was really addicted to that game Magic the Gathering, and I played it all the time, and I got very interested in game design as a concept and how games are made, like video games and board games. And I learned this really cool concept that's useful for all artists or writers or basically anybody in the world of communication. And it's the idea of piggybacking, which is that you think that when you're, I can take you a minute step back, which is that we all have a bunch of preloaded software in our head that is not just like our genetics and our instincts. Like, we are culturally preloaded with ideas about vampires and fire and nighttime and rivers. Like, we have all this preloaded stuff in our brain, and to leave that on the table when you're designing a game or a movie or anything is a huge mistake. Like, you want to be bringing as much of the audience's like memory into your work as you possibly can, so then you can play with it. That's why, I mean, you mentioned that movie I made about the moon landing. Like, people they know what the moon landing is. They have an idea of what it is, right? It's like, I don't have to do so much work to get an audience up to like par with where the movie is going to be. It's not like some random fantasy story where you start from nothing. And my first movie was about a school shooting, which people also have all kinds of preloaded ideas about, right? And even below just like school shootings, there's also like people know about high school. They know about like fraternity. They know about like being a little boy. They know about like making movies. Like, there's so many things that people already know about. And so I'm always trying to make movies about things that people have at least some baggage with, so then you can play with it a bit. It makes it a lot easier, and you don't need to do as much like setting the stage, which I hate doing. I like it when movies just start and you're just going. It's much more interesting to me.
So have you got a real event that you're thinking of turning into your next feature, like looking back at something?
Oh, sure. Well, look, I'm always trying to think of things that I have a huge movie I want to make about the origin of H.P. Lovecraft and Canada and the Confederacy. I'm sorry, the Confederation, like signing the Confederation documents. But it's a bit of a top secret project. Very interesting film. It's about John A. Macdonald being indoctrinated into a Quebec cult that is trying to raise Cthulhu out of the Hudson Bay. And he doesn't know it. And he winds up signing those documents as a way of uniting the provinces to fight against this French Cthulhu cult. And all this was witnessed, and this is the true part of the story. H.P. Lovecraft's dad was there, and it's what drove him insane. He was in a Quebec like insane asylum as a young man. And so it's like, I want to make a movie where he witnesses all of these Cthulhu adjacent moments and then tells his son about it. And then his son writes all the books. But the movie ends way before. Like, he's still a kid. Like, H.P. Lovecraft Sr. is still a kid when the movie ends. But it would be like a movie about the birth of Canada.
I actually think it might be okay. It would be a history piece. It would all be set in like the 1800s, and it would be about Johnny McDonald as he rises from like drunken mayor of Kingston? Is that where he started? Does anybody here know? Yeah, Kingston. Yeah, like he rises the ranks in Kingston because this guy Galt, this highway guy. No, railway guy. It's like corrupt, and Johnny McDonald's just a pawn in it, and you watch him get like battered around by all these different powers.
Is there a legitimate chance that this is going to be made in the not too distant future?
Look, I was telling people I was going to make a movie about BlackBerry, whatever, 3 years ago, and it was just as ridiculous as me saying this now. So maybe, you never know. The way movies, like what movie gets made versus what doesn't, really has to do with like whatever energy is on an idea at the moment, and then other people are like, oh yeah, that would be a good idea. But my friends and I have like 8 or 9 or 10 little things like this, and we just follow them all kind of at the same. They're like 8 cars riding on a track, and then one of them just gets ahead of it, and then that's just the one that we do. There's no telling what movie you'll make next.
Do you think that the success of BlackBerry is affording you more chances and opportunities to do things like this?
Definitely, but it's not like before we'd made BlackBerry, I was like, all it's done is change the scale at which I can make movies now. I was this Johnny McDonald movie, like I could have made instead of BlackBerry, I'm sure. I mean, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Definitely, I have more opportunities to make movies now because of this.
How has that progression been? Like, how did you get your first thing done? Because you started on a web series, right?
Yeah, right. Like when I was just ending film school, I made a web series. This is early web series days. So like YouTube was just barely even a thing at this time, and I was making it for fun with my friend, and it was as lo-fi as you could imagine, and I made that for 2 or 3 years, just almost as like a hobby. And then that hobby, I wound up teaching myself like basic aesthetics. I'd gone to film school. I went to an undergraduate film program at York University, but I was such a late bloomer and so like arrogant in a way that a lot of film students are arrogant, where they're like, oh, I know better than my professors, that I kind of condemned myself not to learn any of the basics of how movies actually work. Now, in some ways, that is the fault of film institutions. It's very rare to find a film school that like grinds into you, this is how a shot works, this is how a movie is constructed scene to scene. Like movies really do have a certain magic to them that is difficult to just sit in the classroom and explain, like you're teaching somebody how to do architectural drafting or something like that, which is much more teachable. It's very difficult to actually teach somebody how a movie works. And so I learned essentially nothing in my undergrad, truly. And it was only in making that web series that I got a sense of like how a story would work, or forget that, like how to keep somebody's attention is what I learned how to do. Because these web series, these episodes are about 10 minutes long, some of them are about 15 minutes long, and it was so hard to keep them interesting that whole time. So by the time that was done, I was like, oh, I have a good sense of how to keep people's attention by editing. And then I just took that aesthetic and used it to make my first feature, which was the same format, a fake documentary, but about 2 kids planning a school shooting. And the idea was we could make it for basically no money, because the aesthetic of the film is that you're watching the kids themselves make the movie you're watching. So I had seen so many first features by my peers, or not even my peers, but people even a generation above me, that all seemed so horrible. Like they seemed so amateurish. Like I was watching so many short films by people in my year, and again, so many features that I thought were just awful. And what I hated about them was that it seemed as though they were like pretending they were like bad copies of real movies, right? They were like bad copies of American films. And it was like they were trying to ape the aesthetic of what a Hollywood movie would be. And I thought, oh, I can't do that at all. Like I need to stay away from that. That's what I did in film school, like bad copies of other films. And so I thought, oh, this is a trick where I can make a movie about kids planning a school shooting probably better than David Fincher could make this movie.
Like I probably can do this better than most professional filmmakers simply because I don't have anything, and that's going to afford me access and power and a kind of authenticity in how we shoot it that you couldn't fake. You can't fake two kids running around with handy cams filming one another in real high schools. You can approximate it, like you could do that for real, but it would cost you so much money and it would be horrible. You would look like the TV show Glee almost. Do you know what I mean? Like where you're like, okay, well, this is just a TV show, or this is just like I realized that the secret, and I've seen this so many times since, is that first features need to be like so of themselves that nobody else could do this movie other than the person who did it. And if you are struggling with what your first feature is going to be, or if you're trying to make a breakout movie, the absolute best advice I can give you, and I give it to young people all the time, is find something that you can do that literally nobody else could do. Or even an even more useful version of this is find the movie that you can make with your resources, that if we were to give the same concept, even the same script, to like Steven Spielberg and $100 million, you would do it better. And that may seem like an impossible task, but it's not. That really is the secret to having a breakout first feature, or to having something that can approximate you having a voice as a creator. Because anything else, and you're going to be seen as an imitator. And we unfortunately are in a country of imitators, like the Canadian film industry, specifically like the indie film scene. 95% of it is like an imitation game where people are trying to get close to what they see happening in the United States, and none of these movies work. None of them work, and they've never worked. And yet we keep making them, because at a certain level it's almost easier to do that than it is to think like, okay, how will I do this in a way that only I could do it? But I'm telling you, it's easier. Like a lot of people are blind to the regional advantages that they have. Like, I'm not sure if any of you live here in Chilliwack, but if I lived here, let's say I was a kid and grew up here, I'd be like, okay, I need to make a movie that is about like being out in like an illegal part of the mountains and like showing stuff. You know what I would do? I'd make a movie about like those dirt bikers that are ripping up and down that Vetter mountain, and one of them like flies off it and breaks his neck or something. I would do a bunch of real stunts with those real people where people are like, oh my God, how did you get insurance for this? But you didn't, right? My point is, you just have access to these things that you don't even realize are amazing. But as soon as you take it out, I'll never forget this story. I'm in Europe and I'm doing a screening of The Dirties at, I think, Locarno in Switzerland. And at the Q&A, they've just screened it. It's in the dramatic competition at Locarno Film Festival. They screened it for like 1,400 people. And at the end, I get brought on stage, and this woman is just amazed. She puts up her hand and she was like, I can't believe this film. It's unbelievable. And I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you. The size of the juice that your mother brings out of the fridge is huge. And I was like, well, excuse me? This juice is like this. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, there's something, it's like I'm so like blind to my own life, and we all are. We're so blind to our own life that if we put it honestly on film, and it seems real when we do it, people have amazing reactions to it, because there's so many little details in your idiosyncratic weird life that you think are boring or stupid or you hate about yourself or whatever it is, but other people would be like, oh wow, that's really real. Oh wow, I can't believe that. Look at the size of that juice.
You can actually get juice in a 2-liter jug.
Yeah. Look, she was on the verge of tears. I'm telling you, like, she was blown away by this juice that I'd never even thought of.
So it's one thing to do 10-minute online videos. How do you make the transition from that to financing and making a feature with The Dirties?
Well, there was no financing. That's the real secret, is that we had no money to make that web series. We're just making it on our own time, and making the movie was exactly the same. Now, I guess I was lucky in that my friends and I had the time to do this when we were in our early 20s, where we could just get together and shoot whenever we wanted to. At the time, I was working as a tour guide at the Ontario Science Centre, so like that's how I was living. Wearing a microphone like this, doing a show where we had a big like static electricity ball. Have you ever seen one of these before? Yeah, I used to run this show. That was like that was the only job I've ever had in my whole life. I did it for years. I worked at that place for I think 7 years, and I was, well, you know what? I'll save that story for another day. I'll say that job was instrumental in me having a film career. That's for sure, because I had so much time to work on my own on my movies while I was working there. But making the jump was more about teaching myself how stories worked, because basically we'd go out and film, and we'd just film stuff in the real world. We'd film in real high schools or just film things with an idea of where this movie would go, and then in editing it, it would be like, okay, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. But there's this one little moment and be like, okay, this is actually okay. Let's try to build around that. So we wrote the script sort of as we went. And so the answer to like how you make that jump is we just sort of did it, and I just started shooting it and then figured it out along the way. If I had sat down, and I did many times, like write a script and be like, okay, the movie's going to be like this. But if I'd stuck to that and been like, we're going to shoot this script, that movie would have been like an abomination. It would have been horrible. And it was only because I was constantly throwing out yesterday's plan whenever we went to the next day's shoot that we wound up getting something interesting. And we shot for a long time and edited for a long, long, long time. And then eventually it became the film. But it was after like lots of hardships. Like we submitted it, a work in progress, to all kinds of film festivals. It got rejected from everyone. And then we went back to shoot more and re-edit it. Like it was a constant battle. And the movie was horrible, 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 horrible until like the last month when it just started to come together. Because another thing I noticed that is a major, an error I see in Canadian films all the time, but this is also worldwide. But I just happen to be exposed to so much young Canadian work, is that they don't cut out the bad parts. And this is so critical. If you are making anything, you don't realize you are not judged by the best thing that is in your movie. You are judged by the worst. You're judged by the worst line from the worst actor, and that's your movie. It's like you can forget everything above it. That's your movie. Like your movie is the worst line delivery from the worst actor that you left in your film. That's your ceiling, right? And that's a very hard thing for people to acknowledge and to admit, but it is God's honest truth. And please, please believe me, that you are not going to escape the bad parts of your film because there's good stuff that's happened before it or is going to happen later. That's just not the way audiences work, and that's certainly not the way film programmers work. You are judged by the worst thing that happens, and so you need the discipline to say, yeah, this is actually bad, I'm cutting it out. And find a way to cut out everything you did that was bad. And if at the end you only have like 17 minutes of stuff, that's a great starting point, right? And then move on and build out from there. In this country, and this goes for, and I'm not just talking about like first feature, like no budget stuff. I'm talking about everything that gets made, like under the Telefilm banner or for the CBC, like they all leave the bad stuff in because they write a script and the director has, I mean, this is a whole political discussion, but it's like for some reason, like directors don't put their foot down in this country and say, yeah, look, I know this is what I wanted to do. I'm telling you it didn't work and we need to change it. And so what happens is you write a script, you go out and shoot it, and the producers are like, great, we got all the footage, now edit it together and that's the movie. But that's not how movies work, right? If you just go and shoot your script and then edit it together exactly as you plan to do, on paper it's like, oh wow, this is a roaring success. Like we were under budget and we shot everything. I can guarantee that is going to be a disaster of a project. Like that's going to be heartless and dead, and that you will have made mistakes that are still in the movie that you can't get out. You need to get into the habit of screening your stuff for strangers, not for people who love you or for people who have a vested interest in you delivering this project, and taking a sober look at it and being like, oh wow, I thought this was going to work, it doesn't work. I need to either reshoot this, cut it out, or find some other contextual trick to make it work. Otherwise, you just fall into the funnel of, again, 95% of the stuff that gets made in this country, which it just doesn't pass the is this real test, because human beings, it's a very difficult thing to present reality to an audience. That's what a movie is. It's like, here's my version of reality, right? BlackBerry is, you think it's a story, but really it's my vision of reality. It's like, this is what I think life on Earth is like, This is how I think people talk to each other, and this is how I think stories go, right? So you're witnessing it, and believe it or not, you are all experts at human behavior. You're surrounded by humans, you talk to humans every day, and you are in fact a human yourself. And you are like dead on pitch perfect at recognizing that's not a human. Right? And that's what filmmakers put in movies all the time. Behavior that's not human, dialogue that's not human, and they don't cut it out, and they just fuck themselves over because we are expert human detectors. And as soon as you see something that seems even a little off, you're like, this sucks, and whoever made this is a moron. Because they don't know how humans behave and how stupid you need to be to not know how humans behave, right? And that really is what happens. The problem is it's just very, very hard to get strangers who are not you to behave exactly the way you want all the time in a movie. It's very hard.
So when you're editing for BlackBerry, did you have footage like that you
95%
desperately wanted to use but couldn't?
Oh, I thought you were going to say the opposite. No. Why would I want to use the bad footage? No way.
I mean, in theory, you like the idea, and like if it had been shot better or different?
I've disabused myself of that a long time ago. I shoot things knowing that I'm going to be able to use 2% or 1% of what we shoot. I know that that's the way it is. In fact, I can't even watch my dailies because they're suicide-inducing. You look at them and you're like, I'm so stupid. Oh my God, I can't believe I shot this angle. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like it's a horrible experience. And it's only, I joke with my editor, Kurt, that like I just shoot long enough until something accidentally happens that's usable, right? It's very rarely what we plan that winds up in the movie. It's like we just shoot a scene so many times over and over and over again until something by accident happens that's good. It's not like we plan on it being good and then it's like, oh, just like we planned, it's good. That's never happened. Ever. No, that's never happened. It's like you go in with the plan and you're just sitting there at the monitor like, oh my God, this is so bad, I can't believe it. But then something accidentally will happen and you're like, good, this might be okay. And then once you have that, then you move on. And then the whole movie is just built out of those little mistakes.
So when you say you shoot it over and over and over, how many times do you shoot a specific scene?
Well, I'm lucky in that I don't shoot coverage. So it's not like I need to hunt for something and then cover it like in close-up, like over and over and over again. I shoot everything in this same technique where we shoot with two cameras at the same time, which have massive, massive zoom lenses on them. They're like nature photography lenses. They're modified, but they shoot from like 50 millimeters to about, with like fully modified, they shoot like 50 millimeters to 500 millimeters. So that's like how they shoot, like, what's that movie? What's that show that everybody loves? Was like Animals Far Away?
Planet Earth.
Planet Earth. Yeah, right.
Oh, the snow leopard footage.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like you can zoom so much. And so I basically leave it to Jared, my cinematographer, to decide how he wants to be framing somebody based on how he feels.